of your organizations. We're really here just to go ahead and really educate, empower, and go ahead and make sure everyone leaves with something, some new great information that they possibly, could be, new to them. So that's awesome. So I want to go ahead and introduce myself here real quick. My name is Tyler Wheeler. I'll come off camera here for a moment to go ahead and say hello. My background's in software development and education. So really love, really helping people and empowering people through educating them and kind of showing them the ins and outs here of Microsoft services and products. Do a lot of types of these trainings here, anywhere from 365 all the way to Azure, Power BI, Fabric, everything along those lines. So super happy to be here with all of you today. And I got Dave Glantz helping me out here in the chat. And what you'll notice is that actually Dave is sending you all posting some messages here in the chat. So if we could please have everyone open up an incognito or private browser and head to office.com, because what's really cool is we actually have a demo tenant that we're all going to be able to work in here today, to where you're going to be able to go ahead and you'll have admin privileges, so you can go ahead and get into the admin center and kind of talk about here these security services that Microsoft has to offer, mainly specifically Microsoft Defender as well as Microsoft Purview, that we're going to be taking a look at here today. So what I want to do is go ahead and direct your attention to that chat, and you're going to see there in the chat, David's posting your name here in a little spreadsheet he's posting in with a persona next to it. And that's the user that you're going to be going ahead and utilizing here today. So you're going to go ahead and grab that email address for that persona, and all the way to the right is the password for today. Everybody has the same passwords, and the URL is just office.com. You can kind of take a look here at my screen. I'm just going to head to the Office landing page, and we'll be able to go ahead and sign in there. So we'll go ahead and take care of that in a minute. But what I want to do is go ahead and turn things over here to, we have Ben from DivergeIT. I want to go ahead and let him introduce himself to you all for sponsoring today's event. And Ben's got some great information for us actually a little bit later in the session as well, as far as a great service here that DivergeIT has to offer. But Ben, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Sure. Hi, my name is Ben Beauvais. I'm the business development engineer for DivergeIT, and we're a managed service provider that supports IT teams. So we help with the expertise in cloud migrations. Azure optimization is a big thing recently. Identity hardening, making sure that everybody is who they say they are. Device hardening, everybody bringing devices from home and making sure those are compliant. And some of you may need to achieve compliance, whether it's HIPAA, that kind of stuff, and we can help you achieve that.
Yeah, the world of compliance here is a bit much to navigate at times. So to be able to have somebody to help you out with that, especially if your organization is new to utilizing, cloud services, and, how you're storing your data, how you're utilizing here these, these SaaS solutions, what we call them, software as a service, if you're new to M365, all of that stuff here really matters as far as you being able to stay compliant, stay above board, making sure that you have the right, security posture in place moving forward with your organization as it continues to grow in your new environment here, this world of the cloud, as we like to say. So having Ben here and the DivergeIT team be able at your disposal is super awesome. So I see some people here who are saying that they'll just be listening and watching. Peter and Aaron, that's totally fine. Totally fine. We have these hands-on environments for you that we can go ahead and make sure that, if you want to follow along, you're more than welcome to. If you just want to watch and observe, totally fine as well. It's to each their own here as we go through today. So that is totally fine. We're just here to go ahead and provide you some knowledge and, some tips and tricks, and just kind of help you understand the security here inside of M365 and the possibilities that you have with it, and really how easy it is to do. And yes, everyone is going to get login credentials. So if you just joined, Junaida, and if I mispronounced your name, I do apologize. Dave's going to be providing that here in the chat for you in a second. He's going to be assigning you a persona itself, and he went ahead and just put that in there. So what you're going to do is go ahead and grab the email address associated with that persona, and go ahead and we're going to log in here to our M365 portal via here office.com. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same with you all right now. And I'm going to go ahead and go off camera here for a minute. Go ahead and not be a distraction to everybody, so we can just focus on my screen here. All right. So what everyone's going to do is go ahead and grab those credentials. that Dave is providing to you, head to office.com, preferably in an incognito or private browser, because it's so it doesn't get mixed up with your own, organization's credentials or anything like that. Your private browser is not going to assume any credentials or anything like that. So it's going to be make sure that we're all getting into the same tenant. And what we're going to do is just go ahead and click sign in. You're going to see that purple sign in button, or at the top right hand corner of your screen, the ability to go ahead and sign in right there. And go ahead and it'll take us to our Microsoft login. So that's where you're going to go ahead and grab those credentials. So I'm going to go ahead and grab mine. I have like an admin tenant here or an admin user that I use in this tenant. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in as you see there. Go ahead and hit next and go ahead and enter in my password as well. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. Yours, it's all the same. It's DivergeIT 123, then bang or exclamation point. And go ahead and click sign in. You don't have to stay signed in. Once you close an incognito browser, it will log you out. And what we want to do is make sure that everyone here is at the M365 landing page. You might see different documents here. As you see on mine, that's because all of these personas that you're using are all different. So you're not necessarily going to see the same documents here that I'm seeing, but you will have access here to everything that you will need to go ahead and have for you today. All right. So I do want to do one thing here real quick as we go in. I'm going to make sure that everyone has access here to the admin center before we go ahead and get logged in. So give me 2 seconds, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and open mine up here and just make sure everyone is good. Give me 2 seconds. You don't have to follow me here. I just want to. Sometimes these environments are supposed to assign everyone essentially a global administrator role. So you can kind of play that role as an admin here as we talk about here these security features inside of our M365 environment. So I just want to double check here for that while we're going. And while we're doing that here, if you want to go ahead and throw in the chat here, what brought you here today? We really love to hear that. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions as well through polls, but if you have a little introduction you'd like to throw in the chat there, since we all can get to know each other, so we can all get to know each other a little bit better. As I just double check everything in here, I'm just double checking the users that we have assigned and just making sure that they have their role set properly. But a little introduction there in the chat. We would, love to get to know you. Actually, that would be fantastic if you'd like to and share that. As I said before, my background here is in software development, but mainly education, and I've been doing Microsoft trainings for almost 3 years now, and mostly in the Azure realm. But I've kind of moved into talking more about as far as more M365 products and security aspects there as well. And a lot of these kind of security itself kind of can apply to, or the security tools here in M365 exist in Azure as well, like Purview, for example. There are ways to go ahead and monitor your data a little bit differently in Azure, utilizing maybe a analytics workspace or things like that, using Azure Monitor for that. Policies as well. We'll talk about there are different kind of policies depending on. They're a little bit different in Azure compared to M365, but it has a lot to do here with kind of access control and who can access what in when, and making sure that everyone has the appropriate rights to go ahead and see what they need to see, but kind of nothing more, nothing less aspect of it. And we'll kind of talk about that as well when we talk about authorization and authentication, because that is definitely a big portion of security itself and your security posture. Okay, I think everyone's gonna be good here. Pretty sure. Right. Cool. All right, perfect. So what I want to do is make sure that everyone here is at our M365 landing page, and we're able to go ahead and use the demo credentials to get logged in if you want to go ahead and follow along inside of our demo tenant today. So if you don't mind in the chat, throwing me a GTG in there, just to let me know that you're good to go. Essentially, you're looking at the same screen, you're logged in as your persona inside of here. Brian, thanks for the feedback. Just want to make sure everyone's off on the right foot, and I'll do another good to go check here in a moment when we go ahead and launch our admin center. Just make sure everyone has access to it. But if you're having any trouble getting logged in here, let us know in the chat. But if not, a GTG, a good to go, would be super, super helpful to make sure that everyone is doing A-okay. All right, Stephanie as well, thank you so much. And for those that are also just getting logged in, Aaron as well, thank you so much. What we're going to do now, if you are logged in, is go ahead over here on the left-hand side in our little navigation hub within our M365 landing page. And you're going to see the little icon here for your admin center. And that is where we are going to be heading and spending our day today. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that admin center and make sure everyone can get into the admin center here. If you're unable to, let me know. It's a quick fix. I just need to give you the appropriate permissions, but I think I have it all set here. I have to double check these demo tenants a lot. Sometimes they don't automatically add them. So I want to make sure everyone is good to go. Janita, you do not see the admin center. Okay, so let me double check your persona here. You are a Dell. Just make sure you're logged in as the persona that we've provided. So your persona, Janita, does have the global administrator role. So if you don't mind, go ahead and log out and log back in, just to make sure that, you know, maybe a previous session being cached or anything like that. Yep. Yeah, just go ahead and try that for me and let me know. But that's why I really like to double check with everybody, make sure everyone's following along okay. Everything is doing great for you. That is awesome. So while everyone else is doing that, and looks like we had someone else join. Ben, welcome. Benjamin, welcome, welcome. Dave's going to be providing you some credentials here. If you want to head to office.com in a private or incognito browser, you can go ahead and use that email and password, which is to the right of the email, to go ahead and log into our demo tenant. And we're going to be heading to the admin center. So let me double check. Joni should be, nope, let me double check and change Joni here. That's going to be your persona. Just give her an admin role. Perfect. All right. Cool. All right. So as everyone's making their way here into the admin center, what I want to do is, you know, just kind of talk about what we're going to be taking a look at today in the sense of Microsoft Security Framework, because Microsoft Security Framework is built on the basis of essentially 4 pillars, which we're going to kind of go through here today. And those four pillars are identity and access management, information protection, security management, as well as threat protection. And identity access management means only the right people have access to the right resources at the right time. So this is kind of tying into what I was talking about before with conditional access. We're going to talk about MFA as well and identity protection. And then you have the threat protection pillar, which protects you against cyber threats, such as malware, viruses, or other malicious activities. We can walk through, and we have a demo to go through it, essentially a phishing simulation. And there's tools in here to detect ransomware and recovery, as well as advanced threat analytics that can be provided here with Microsoft Defender, as well as there's some other tools as well, which I can highlight on a little bit later. Then the third pillar, information protection, to defend your sensitive data, such as intellectual property, financial data, and customer information. It includes features like data classification, encryption, and data loss prevention. We're going to be taking a look at that here today, as well as security management to help manage your security posture across organizations using monitoring and detecting response, as well as security incident remediation, as well as just getting a good picture as far as your security stature here as it kind of stand inside of Microsoft, inside of your Microsoft tenants. And there's tools for that and ways to go ahead and get detailed information, as well as solutions to help improve that security posture with what our Microsoft Secure Score, which we'll take a look at as well. So those are the 4 pillars that we're really going to be taking a look at here today. And what I want to do is go ahead and kind of move into that as well as we go through. And let's head to essentially our first portal, because here inside of your admin center, you have your own essentially like admin portals for different services themselves, or for different applications that you utilize. And what we're going to be starting here is with Microsoft Purview and getting into data loss prevention. So what we're going to do is head to that portal right now inside of our admin center. So what we're going to do is go ahead, you're going to see an option to click show all here inside of your M365 admin center landing page. And if you click show all, you're going to see all of those different admin centers I was talking about. Now, not all of them here. You can like pin these and go ahead. This is fully customizable for the ones probably you deal with more. If you're, not utilizing, Teams for if you're not, you could go ahead. You wouldn't need to see that admin center for Teams right there. But what we're going to do is go ahead and start here with our compliance section or compliance center. So what we're all going to do is go ahead and click on compliance in our admin centers, and that's going to open up here another tab for you, which is going to take you into the Microsoft Purview compliance portal. So this is where we're going to jump into our third and fourth pillar, being those pillars, as I mentioned before, being information protection as well as security management. So we're going to talk about two here as we go through on inside of Purview of these built-in security management solutions, the data loss prevention, as well as our compliance manager. And our compliance manager helps you organize compliance requirements with greater ease and convenience. And it helps you follow the rules to keep your data safe and shows you what to do and how well you're doing at it. And then with data loss prevention, it's leveraging the labeling and classification capabilities of Microsoft's information protection to apply policies and actions to sensitive data items across different locations and platforms. And within that compliance manager and the Microsoft information protection service here is what we do to go ahead and detect the certain data that we want to go ahead and protect our organization within our organization, I should say. Things that have to do with compliance. And we're going to use a template that you're going to see how this kind of, all kind of meshes together. Something very specific here to certain compliance offerings. So what we're going to do is go ahead here on the left-hand side. We have all of these solutions. You can see we'll get the data loss prevention. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But we have information protection as well. There's as well as you can kind of go ahead and audit your tenant and things like that. There's lots and lots of things here. So keep in mind, I'm not trying to just brush over them. It's just we only have so much time to go ahead and talk about so much here today. So what we're going to do, though, is expand this data loss prevention section and go ahead and once you expand that, what we're going to do is go ahead and choose the policies option underneath data loss prevention. And you're going to see some default policies in here. This is just created here as far as this demo tenant. You're going to have some that will kind of always appear here when you create a Microsoft tenant itself. But what we're going to do is go ahead and create our own. We're going to really just walk through how you go ahead and create one from scratch. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click on create a policy. And talk about here as we go through how to do this, the scope, how to apply it, the granular control you have of these policies and what data is being monitored and where it's being monitored and the actions that you're going to take with the policy itself. So you have the ability to essentially create your own custom policy that can be, assigned and can kind of, go span the, different types of information that you're looking to protect. It could be, organizationally specific. But what we're going to do is, for today's purposes, for the demo purposes, is just use essentially a template policy. And the template that we're going to use is within the financial category. So if you go ahead and click on financial, you're going to see a couple policies here, template policy definitions that you can utilize. And the one we're going to choose here is the U.S. Federal Trade Commission Consumer Rules template. So if you click on that, it'll go ahead and pull up here this description over here on the right-hand side and the information that we'll be protecting. So credit card numbers, banking numbers, routing numbers, things of that nature. So anyone who deals in, uh, banking or any kind of e-commerce or anything like that, where information is stored as far as user financial information, this type of policy is definitely going to be applicable to you, or even outside of that here as well. If you think about direct deposit within organizations here, within a if you do your own um, billing or everything like that, uh, this information exists within your organization. So it's good to go ahead and make sure that you are protecting it. All right. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and click next down here at the bottom. So this is the template that we're going to use. So we're going to have to go ahead now and give it a little bit more information and define the scope and everything that I kind of mentioned before. We'll walk through it now. So the thing is, what it's going to do is, in this case, in this template, it's going to take the default name of the template that we're using. Now, if we're all working in the same tenant and we're all utilizing the same template, we can't use the same default name because it does have to be unique here within your tenant. So to make it unique, what we're going to do is go ahead and I'm just going to type my first name in front of this name of this policy. So this is going to be Tyler's U.S. Federal Trade Commission Consumer Rules. You can name it anything you want. You can have some fun with it if you like. And we'll just leave the description as is. Right. Then we're going to go ahead and click next. And this is where it gets into the idea of admin units. And we're going to see this a couple times here today. So admin units are created within your, and notice it still says Azure Active Directory. It will soon say Microsoft Entra Directory, which is its Azure Active Directory has been renamed to Entra. I'm still struggling with the name change. But you have the ability to restrict this policy essentially to specific sets of users or groups. The reason you would want to do that really depends on your organization and the type of data it's dealing with. If this is something that, that this policy, you might have, I don't know, a good example of, people in an accounting department that maybe need access to this information and need to be able to send it to one another. And you have your own policy in place allowing those people to send that information back and forth. We wouldn't want to apply this policy to them because it would hinder what they're already doing. So you do have to be strategic in how you go ahead and assign these policies, and utilizing admin units is a way to go ahead and make sure that someone is exempt from it if they need to be. Now, for our case, we're not going to add any or anything like that. We're just going to go ahead essentially and apply this to our entire directory within this demo tenant, just to kind of simplify things for this demo. So then we're going to come down to the bottom and click next. And this is where we're going and applying essentially the scope of the policy as to where it's going to be applied. And what this would do is essentially go ahead and bring in everything within your tenant, within your M365 tenant is available here. We have essentially SharePoint sites, OneDrive accounts, anything shared within those. So that's like, Word documents, Excel documents, PowerPoints, things like that, to where you could go ahead and apply it to everything, even devices that are managed with Intune, for example, that are in your tenant. If you're utilizing that, any on-prem repositories that are being managed by Microsoft Purview as well, this policy would be applicable for that as well. Now, you do have the ability to go ahead and add and remove certain users and groups, possibly like a certain SharePoint site where certain information is stored. You'd have the ability to go ahead and do that. So it is very granular as far as how you can go ahead and specify what to apply the policy to, or where you should apply the policy to. So we're going to apply it to everything. Like I said, I just want to point that out as we go through. So we're going to go ahead and hit next once again. And this gets into our policy settings. So we have the option to go ahead, and this is essentially reviewing the template that we have in place. Now we could create a customized, advanced rules or things like that. But for this policy, what we're going to do now is go ahead and click next and leave that bubble selected for credit cards, banking numbers, as well as routing numbers. And come down to the bottom and hit next. So this is where we bring in the information to protect. And this is what we're going to be doing essentially is assigning or telling here our Microsoft Information Protection what type of information to look for and how sure of it does it have to be that it is that specific type of information. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click edit here. And it's going to bring up those information types. And we're going to see a lot more. There's actually about 313, I think, information types available for you that you can go ahead and monitor. And it's global. So you'll see like there's the option for like, not just, US social security numbers, anything like EU, for example, like that kind of thing. So keep that in mind when it's all those information types. But so this template here is already added these sensitive info types for us because we're utilizing the template. And you can see over here the confidence that is assigned with them. Now, Microsoft, if you click on any of here that you have the learn more, the little info button next to any one of these info types, it will tell you as far as the confidence that is recommended here for that because as far as credit cards, for example, high or medium confidence is recommended. So you want it to be absolutely sure before it goes ahead and the policy is essentially triggered by certain information being shared in any of those services that we had defined on the previous page. Because believe it or not, there are other 16-digit numbers out in the world. Uh, so you do want to be very confident that it is in the scope here as far as it's analyzing the text, as far as the content, the intent of the actual message or the document that it's put into to ensure that, yes, this contains a credit card number. This is out of policy for our organization. So what we're going to do, we're going to leave those confidence levels just as is, but I wanted to go ahead and explain what those confidence levels mean. So you can just go ahead and click save or cancel, I'm sorry, since we didn't actually change anything. And we're going to go ahead now and click next. So this tells us here when the policy here is essentially violated or is as something is out of policy, what are we doing? So what we're doing is we have options here for that. So when a content maybe matches policy conditions, we could go ahead and show users tips or send them an email saying, hey, you put this credit card number in this document. That's not what we do here. That's out of policy. Here are ways that we go about sharing this information if you need to. So you can go ahead and specify within your organization your best practice and how to handle that. You can have incident reports sent to management or things like that. You could see there that it was out of policy as well. You could also send alerts to any kind of global admin when that rule essentially is the policy or something is out of policy as well. And you can customize those alerts. You can go ahead and choose what and who to send to. As far as here, it's being sent to the site admin. As far as the severity level of the rule that's been set here, the incident reports, all of this information as well. So you do have that availability here within your Microsoft tenant, which is all included with it, which is awesome. All right. So we'll just go ahead and leave all of that checked here. Once again, just kind of explaining what that actually means. And what we're going to do now is go ahead and click next one more time. Right. So here, right now already it's saying that, in this policy, you can see there at the top by default, users are blocked from sending email and Teams chat message that contain the type of content that was protected. But you can choose who has access to, a shared SharePoint or OneDrive files. You can have it set to people can actually override the policy's restrictions as well. So if you go ahead and here, if you clicked on to audit, essentially restricted assets and devices, you could go ahead and specify here, even at a more granular level, how deep this wants to go as far as you have the ability, like if people are copying credit card numbers to their clipboard, for example, essentially it would just show up in the audit report. You can actually go ahead and block it or set to block with override as well for that. You can turn on these things if you want, really doesn't matter. I just kind of want to walk through even printing certain documents and things like that. And another thing here, if you come on down, restricted app activities. So you can actually go ahead and monitor third-party applications that are set up here that you utilize within, with your M365 services, like as, Dropbox or, G Suite, for example. You could go ahead and turn that on as well. You could also restrict any access or removal of on-prem files here, and Purview can monitor that if it's monitoring devices or repositories of data that are available, that you have set up here, being monitored by other security features, such as like Intune, for example, within your organization. So lots and lots of settings here, lots of granularity to these policies. So I'm just going to go ahead and click next there. And this is where you have essentially, before we go ahead and create the policy, you have the ability to go ahead and test it out. So if you want to see how it's working here, it could be that maybe it's a little, it could possibly be too strict or not strict enough. So you want to test it out first to go ahead and really zero in on, like, okay, so maybe we need to turn on, we have people copying information or printing information and we didn't have that set up, sort of thing. And we still see that happening. It's like, okay, well, maybe we should have this policy monitor that as well. So you have the ability to kind of test it out, go back and change anything before you go ahead and turn it on, and have it really implemented and set up within your organization. So I'm just going to essentially run it in test mode right now. Just leave that. And you could go ahead and choose whatever you want. You can turn it on immediately. It's totally fine. These take about an hour to go ahead and actually start to implement within these environments itself. So sometimes they kick on a little early. It's always fun. You can go back and try to send Teams messages or emails with credit card numbers. And if the policy is active and actually running, you'll get an email saying it's been blocked and things like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click next here. And this just gives you a basic review of everything that you essentially configure. This is Microsoft set all this up like a wizard, which makes it really easy. It's like install wizards. So it just tells you exactly what you need. If you were missing certain information, it would let you know before you could go ahead and create the policy. So we'll go ahead now and just submit our policy. All right, we'll give this a second here. All right, we can see that new policy has been created. So you can go ahead and click done once yours is done. And what you should see back on this page, if I go ahead and refresh, we're going to see people's policies start to come in there once you go ahead and turn that on or get that going. So it's totally cool. You'll see yours, you'll see mine on this page. Just super awesome. Right. So what I wanted to do now is go ahead and throw a little poll out here, because we love to get feedback in these events and kind of see where everyone's, security stature kind of exists or lies at this point here within their organization. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. Kind of has to do with what we were talking about here as far as data loss prevention. So does your company need to follow certain compliance standards, such as, HIPAA, GDPR, PCI, with potential for passing an IT security audit? So if you know, yes. If you don't, if you know that you don't, you can put no. Or if you're not sure, there is that option as well. But we really do appreciate that feedback, just to, kind of see where everyone is, because we understand everyone's organization is different. We're all dealing with different types of data. You know what I mean? You might not be handling sensitive data as much as another organization. So these sort of things maybe aren't top of mind. But the fact is, if you are handling any kind of sensitive data, these tools and services are here for you, and you can actually utilize them, and very easily. Is what we like to show here today, as far as just creating a policy. Took us, what, 5-10 minutes with me running my mouth during it. If I wasn't, it would probably take a lot shorter. Right. All right. So as we keep on rolling here, what I want to kind of talk about more is still on the lines of information protection and things like that. But I want to go into how to create a sensitivity label. So information protection can do two things for you. It labels the document as you're viewing it, and it also can encrypt the document. So if you encrypt the document, the user must have permission before it can be viewed. And even if you send it to someone else, it's still the encryption stays with it. So only the people with those permissions are able to access it. Then adding an extra layer of security to it. It's kind of like if you ever used like your OneDrive, for example, you share a document, you have the ability to go ahead and say, here, you provide a link to it, but it's that person can view it, can edit it, can comment on it. Kind of the same thing as far as this encryption is concerned. Not quite, but like just trying to make it, a little bit, as far as how to digest and everything like that. So if you label them as far as the document, it helps the organization. It helps with organizing in your organization and ensuring that important information is protected and not inappropriately sent. So, even for example, if you went ahead and let's say you need to send out a 100-page document here, and if you have information protection labels enabled, so in our case, we're going to do one for a social security number. So even if the social security number is maybe on like the 19th page of that document, the program will detect it and let you know that there is sensitive information on the document, and you can even apply a watermark to the header or footer or across the page diagonally as well across the document, which is really cool. So we're still inside of Purview here. This is where you go ahead and work with information protection, specifically sensitivity labels. So what we're going to do is head now in our navigation pane here inside of our Purview portal to the information protection section. We're going to go ahead and expand information protection and then go ahead and choose labels. All right. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and walk through the process of creating your own label. And you're going to see how this is applicable and similar to policies because policies will enforce your labels. And it's going to be very familiar to kind of what we just did, just taking it a step further as far as, providing, not essentially blocking this document, but making sure that it's encrypted and only the people that need to see it are seeing it. So what we're going to do is create our own label from scratch. So you'll see the option here to go ahead and create a label. Let's go ahead and click on that and get into it. All right. So need a few things. Few things are required: a name, a display name, and a description to users. The name is just kind of a friendly name. The display name is the display name that other users will see when it's published, as far as they can utilize this label in their own policies as well. And then a description for it. So we're going to start with that. So we're going to go ahead and just use, essentially, since this does need to be unique within our tenant, we want to make sure that we're utilizing a name that is unique. So I'm going to go ahead and type in, just going to use my name. This is Tyler's label. And I'll do the same thing here for my display name. We'll just call it the same name. Doesn't matter. And then our description. The priority itself, you can assign that later. It's essentially use numerical values. The higher number, the higher priority of the label itself. Just keep that in mind. You already saw a few there that were labeled in that order. So you have the ability to set that up and that control within your organization as well, just to keep that in mind. But this label that we're going to be creating is going to be to protect social security numbers. All right. The label color, this is just essentially like a folder color. You don't need to pick one. You can if you want. I'll pick green. It's my favorite color. All right. Go ahead and hit next now. All right. So now we get into the real, the meat and potatoes of this as far as the scope is concerned. So just like in our policy, what are we applying this to? you know, essentially that was like where we were applying it to, but this is in the sense of specific items that we are applying this to. And we want to go ahead and apply this label to all of these items that you see here, as far as, you know, files created, Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, you know, email sent in Outlook, you know, or anything as far as within Teams, essentially calendar events or meetings scheduled in Outlook, as well as Teams. Anything that essentially leaves a paper trail is the way you want to think about it. There are like group sites and this schematized data assets that you can go ahead and utilize the purview map. There's a bunch of extra steps you need to do that, but all that documentation is here. If you go ahead and you can grab it here, if that's interesting to you. But the label, taking this label beyond here to the data stored in your databases, whether it be, you know, on-prem or databases in Azure, as well as you have here Amazon as well. All right, so let's go ahead and click next. And this is where essentially we are going to say here, we are applying encryptions, and we'll be able to choose essentially who has that role over that, or possibly to remove encryption. But also, if we want to go ahead and apply content marking, we have that ability to choose, turn that on or off here with this label itself. So we do want to go ahead and turn on that encryption. And then go ahead and click on apply content marking as well, just so we can show you that how to do it here. So this would be adding essentially a watermark, you know, or, you know, to header or footer or things like that. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click next here once we have both of those boxes selected. All righty. So these are essentially, we turned on those encryption settings. What we want to do now is essentially assign, you know, who has which permissions as far as the scope of these permissions itself. So right now, essentially, the encryption settings we choose to have will automatically be enforced when the label is applied to the items that we're monitoring. So we want to go ahead and give the permissions here to, you know, who has access to these items, and essentially who is going to be control of these items. So what we're going to do is assign permissions, and go ahead and click on that here. This essentially, the little link there, it's going to pop out this blade on the right hand side. So this is where you would think about in your organization, you know, who is going to essentially have control over this, especially with this specific label, depending on the information types that are being applied. So you might have like you can apply specific users. You could also apply a group of users. So if you have like a management or a group that includes management, not a management group, sorry, that's something in Azure. I don't want to be confusing about that. Or you could go ahead and add all of your organization. You have, that's the thing about these policies and these labels as they've been kind of going through, is we have the ability to assign this to specific you know, a scope of people, you know, a lot of control over these labels and these policies. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click add users and groups, and you could just go ahead and choose yourself here as you see yourself. Since it's your policy or your label you're creating, you can just go ahead and choose yourself. We have to choose somebody though for this. These labels can take up to a day, actually, the policies with them, to go ahead and be put into action. So we're not going to see it here, the result of it, but walking you through the steps on how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and just add my persona here. I'm the CIE administrator for today. Just go ahead and click add, and then go ahead and save. All right, so we're going to go ahead and click next now. And this is where we get into that other thing we turn on as far as the content marking. So we're going to go ahead and enable that slider there to go ahead, and you can sorry, lost my train of thought. This is where essentially you would add any of the marking that you want applied here to a document that essentially the policy reads it as this having the sensitive information, and the label is applied. So if you want to go ahead and add a footer, add a header, for example, like if I wanted to add a footer, I'll leave that checked here. I could then customize the text of that by clicking on customize text, to where over here on the right-hand side in this blade, I could say, contains PII, personal information. And you could choose the font color, where it's aligned, the font size. Red's, I think, a good color for that, just to let you know. If you do the watermark, you can do that kind of diagonal across the document. Maybe you just say classified or something like that. I think of like, FBI documents from movies. You could, obviously I probably wouldn't do that within your organization because probably not as professional, but in this case, you can have some fun with that if you want. All right. And that we'll do is go ahead and click next. All righty. So this is essentially another setting for auto labeling here. So, when any kind of user, anything like that, or creating a file or all these items or emails or things like that, this is going to apply the label automatically and recommend also as well to the user, like, hey, you're dealing with sensitive information here that this label here is monitoring. We could go ahead and that they can apply it themselves as well. So what we're going to do is essentially, this is where we can turn on essentially what we're looking for is the easiest way to think about this. So that's where it comes into these conditions, because right now we haven't said, yes, we said in a description, we're monitoring for social security numbers, but we haven't told here with our information protection inside of Microsoft, hey, what is the type of information we're looking for? It needs to go ahead as far as that label assignment, that sensitive label tag that we want to go ahead and apply. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click add condition right here and go ahead and specify when the content contains. And this is essentially where we add those sensitive labels. So if I go ahead and click add, I can go ahead and choose sensitive info types. And that'll pop out this blade on the right-hand side of your screen to where these are those 313 items I was talking about. We have passport numbers, addresses, things like that, dealing with different countries and things like that, IP addresses even as well. So what we're going to do is go ahead and use this search bar, and you could just type in SSN and then hit enter to search for social security number, because that's what we're looking to go ahead and do here for this. All right, so we're going to go ahead and click add. So that is adding here. That is the info type that we're looking to, or did I choose it? I'm so sorry, I didn't choose it. You have to select it, what you want, and I totally didn't. I'm so sorry about that. We're going to go ahead and select US Social Security number and check that box there. Okay, so that is the info type we are adding. Now we will click add, and then you will see here the same thing that we saw before inside of our policy, the info type as well as the confidence level that we want to go ahead and apply it to, and the recommended confidence level for this. Medium is recommended. It tells you here, as far as the low content, each confidence level, it utilizes different functions when reading the document. So that's why you see different essentially elements here. These are the functions that run within the document, within the policy itself, or the label that we'll soon make into a policy. But we'll just leave it at medium confidence here. And we're going to go ahead and say to automatically apply the label. You could go ahead and also leave your users a message as far as when it's applied to say, hey, let you know this label's been applied to this document because of, you could say here, contain PII, for example. And go ahead and click next. All right. So we didn't turn on groups and sites protection. It's just specific to items. So we're not going to go ahead. We're not going to have the ability to turn on any of these options. So we'll go ahead and click next as well. And we also are not utilizing the purview data map. So you can click next again from here as well. And then we'll go ahead and click create label. All right. Cool. So what we want to do now is go ahead and choose this option to publish label. And then we're going to, once we do it again here from this other screen, we can then go ahead and create a policy with it. So just go ahead and click done down at the bottom. And you don't need to worry about creating a policy here. If you can, from that blade, I'm going to close it now because I want to see here on this page. We can see people's labels are coming in. That's awesome. It's essentially your persona and how who you created it with. All right. So now what we're going to do is choose our label and then go ahead and click publish label. I know it seems a little weird that you do that, but when we're publishing it, it's going to take us, as you see here, to creating a policy. So we have the label itself. So what we can do now is go ahead and create a label policy that will enforce our label. So what we'll do is go ahead and we can see here excuse me one second. We can see here that we have the sensitivity labels to publish, which will be your label that you just chose. So we'll go ahead and click next. Once again, we have this idea of admin units, as I mentioned before. Just don't choose anything. There aren't any set up anyway. We're just going to be applying this here to our full directory and go ahead and click next and applying it here to all. We're publishing this to all users and groups. Go ahead and click next. All right. So with your policy settings, you can go ahead and users must provide here. They can, you can turn on the ability for them to provide justification to remove a label if they need to, saying here, oh, maybe this label, this label actually marked it wrong for whatever reason. So you'd want to turn that on. You're going to require users as well. It's going to be automatically applied, but you could still, for whatever reason, if that doesn't work, require them to get into the idea of thinking about here the type of information they're sharing. You can go and require them to apply their label to the documents. You have the ability to apply it to Power BI content as well. You could go ahead and turn that on. Totally fine. So, and you can also go ahead and provide them here with essentially a page to navigate them to a page to help them understand, maybe your organization's policies better, maybe like a white paper or some sort of, one pager or something you have here within your own organization. You can direct them to that. Right. So we'll go ahead and click next one more time. Now we essentially choose all of those items that we specified here that this label can monitor. Now, how are we going to go ahead and apply that label? Which label are we going to apply to those type of items? So from this drop down, we're going to go ahead and choose our label. And we're applying that here to our documents. Go ahead and click next. We'll do the same thing. It'll just kind of populate itself, same as document. Require users to apply the label. We turned that on before. Just make sure that's still there. That's good. As far as your meetings and calendar events, we'll go ahead and choose our label once again. That won't grab the same as documents for some reason. You could require them as well, but this is going to be automatically labeled, like I said. And then Power BI, if you had Power BI content, you could choose the label to apply as well. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that as none. And now we need to give here our policy name. So same thing as before, it does need to be unique. I'm going to call this Tyler's label policy. And give it a description as well. Protect Social Security numbers. Go ahead and click next. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And this is going to go ahead and create a policy, which will then enforce the label. So you can see here, it can take some time here to be able to publish these labels on into these users' applications, so it'd be monitored as well. So if you went into Outlook right now, possibility that the label could be applied, possibility it might not. If you like sent a document that contained that or created a document, that watermark might be there. It might not. Just letting you know, these things do take a little bit of time to set up within the tenant. So, but the point is to knowing how to do it, and the impact that they can have on your organization is what is super, super important. All right. Cool, cool, cool. So, oh, I'm sorry, you found it. I'm sorry, I missed that message there. My chat was blocked out. Junaid, I apologize for that. Did not mean to miss your message there. Wasn't trying to ignore you. But glad you found it. Yep, awesome, awesome. All right. So do have another question for you all. Throw out another poll since we just talked about here label policies. Do you have sensitivity label policies in place to help educate your team against any kind of data loss prevention? If you do, great. If you're not sure and like to learn more, also let us know of that. Learned a little bit here on how to go about creating it. There's no one correct way to do this all. A lot of this is, when it comes to compliance and things like that, yeah, there are regulatory rules that you have to abide by, but a lot of this is very organizationally specific, and I want you to be aware of that. So that's why working here with partners that have such a, if you're unsure of it, it's good to bring in someone who knows what they're doing. As far as like DivergeIT, for example, that's why Ben's here today. That's why they put on these workshops for us, so we can learn more about it, but also kind of open up that door to say, hey, if you're looking to learn more, or kind of we have ideas on how these policies should work, but we don't know really how to implement it. That's what DivergeIT does for you. It's any kind of specialization. If you're not a plumber, doesn't you're gonna call a plumber to fix your toilet. You're not going to try to fix it on your own, which I've tried to do, and too many times, and I inevitably called the plumber. So just keeping that in mind. Yeah, got little things I can fix, but yeah. So I digress. I apologize for that. All right. So what I want to talk about now is something very, very important, and it's something that is becoming more the norm, as it should be, and something that it probably seemed like a nuisance at first, and that's MFA, multi-factor authentication. And that's our first pillar. It falls under our first pillar, as I was mentioning before, as Microsoft security kind of structure, identity and access management. It's important to protect credentials with strong passwords, encryption, as well as MFA. Credentials are a common target for hackers and a major source of data breaches. About 80% of security-related breaches are caused by stolen or lost credentials. Username and password, it's one thing, you know what I mean? That's your first line of defense, but the second is some sort of multi-factor authentication, utilizing the Microsoft Authenticator app, or I don't know if any of you have, utilizing a Windows device. If you have Windows Hello enabled, some organizations require that. It requires a biometrics in order to actually get into your, work computer. Further saying, that information on your computer cannot be accessed if it's not you, so to speak. Having multiple forms of authentication is important. here, and that's what we're trying to go ahead and hit on. So I know some people are like, oh, I got to log in with this and that and the other, but it's really, really important in protecting your organization. Each one of you are a little wormhole into your organization. So if someone, gets your credentials, any kind of bad actor or anything like that, and gets inside of your tenant, they are in your tenant, and that's it. And then it takes us into the idea of authorization, which gets into conditional access is another thing I want to talk about. So with, authentication and authorization go hand in hand. Who can get in, and then what do they have access to? And conditional access is really critical in helping your organization, monitor and set here with permissions, for example, of, who has permissions to what, and what level of permission do you have? If I'm if I'm um, the guy who comes into the office to clean the office at night, I might have an account or a user in the tenant for some reason, but how much do I really need to have access to, as opposed to the CEO, for example, or the CTO, for example? They need to have probably more access to more things, if not like a global administrator kind of access to your tenant, which makes them a bigger target for any kind of data breach, because if someone gets in with their credentials, they have access to everything, as opposed to the person who doesn't need access to everything. We don't need to give them access to everything. So if their credentials are compromised, it's not as big of a hit. So just keeping that in mind as you go through thinking about your organization and how it stands with that. So want to go ahead and ask everyone here, do you have, MFA as well as security awareness training as well? That's going to kind of lead into our next little part here, to in place to guard against bad actors. Right. Really appreciate the feedback on that. You'd be surprised that sometimes it's still not in place in a lot of organizations. It is surprising. Right. Well, really, really appreciate everybody with that. Cool, cool, cool. All righty. So what I want to do now is kind of shift gears to essentially the other big, not half, but the other big service here within Microsoft, within your Microsoft tenant, that is here for you as far as protecting um, your uh, your tenant, and that's going to be Microsoft Defender. Is what we're going to get into. And this is kind of getting into the idea of things like, monitoring your security stature inside of your tenant. So we're going to head there and take a look, and then do a fun little exercise to kind of end things off here with a little, little phishing simulation. We're going to go ahead and set up and show you how you can actually do that within your tenant as well, because it's about training your employees as well and making sure that everyone has the knowledge they need and to protect your organization. So I'm going to go ahead and you can close the tab that you have Purview open in. And what we want to do is just head back to our Admin Center tab inside of our browser. Because this time we want to go ahead and head to our Security Admin Center. If you go ahead and click on that, it will go ahead and open up Security, which takes you into Microsoft Defender. Right. Looks like my navigation didn't load. I'm going to refresh my page here. Oh, that's weird. Should be able to go ahead and there it is. There it's coming in. Sorry about that. I went ahead and all right, cool. So one thing I want to touch on real quick is the idea of this, Microsoft Secure Score. And we're going to go ahead and open that up here so we can just take a look. It's right up here at the top, top left here within your navigation hub within Defender, and just talk about a few things here that you see. This is essentially giving you a snapshot of your organization's current security posture, but more importantly, the opportunities you have to improve it. It kind of shows you how well you're doing with the security features and the security as far as within the scope of your M365 tenant. So keep that in mind. This is, Microsoft services or anything your Microsoft services can monitor. But the big thing that I want to go ahead and talk about here is this idea of the recommended actions. So if you click on recommended actions, it'll give you suggestions as far as based on the size of your organization and things like that, things you could go ahead and turn on and to improve your score. And it'll actually give you a percentage rating. Now, you're not looking to have 100%. That's pretty much, it's not achievable. If you click on metrics and trends, what you can see is kind of a baseline of organizations similar to your size. And kind of it's monitoring all of them and kind of sharing that secure score as well, and how your organization stacks up to it. And you can see here organizations of this many users, their secure score is about 47% on average, which is something to aspire to. But idealistically, you're not looking to go ahead and make it 100%. Just keep that in mind. It's not a perfect score. Depending on your organization, most of the time you'd like to see things around, like 60 to 70%, I usually think is a pretty good kind of way to think about as far as for most organizations are concerned. Just things to keep in mind. But those recommended actions, as your tenant changes, your company grows, certain things are going to go ahead and be applied. Oh, you could improve this way as well. Just a great tool for you that Microsoft has to help you make the changes. And if you clicked on any one of these here actions, it'll tell you essentially what it is and the implementation of it and how to do it. So a little bit of help there, but larger organizations and things like that, it gets a little more complicated than just that. Also, it's not always a one size fits all. So hence why that score is not, super, like you're not trying to be, get it to 100% per se. It needs to be applicable and fit your organization's need. That's why, companies like DivergeIT can help you with that and make sure that you are where you need to be as your security posture. All right. Cool. All right, so we're going to have a little bit of fun here. I think this is kind of fun, just to kind of end the day. We were kind of serious and talking about, credit card numbers and social security numbers and not as much fun stuff. So what we're going to do is actually go ahead and show you a feature of Defender, which is pretty cool to go ahead and create. We're going to go ahead and open up here on the left-hand side our attack simulation training, to where we can go ahead and create our own, essentially, simulation as far as, and do a phishing attack. And we can phish our own employees. So it can conduct a phishing attack, give us a report on who passed, who failed, and go ahead and let us know and give us options to go ahead and help them train our employees so it doesn't happen again. If this were real, we obviously wouldn't want this to happen. So we want to go ahead and make sure that our organization is prepared, because it's inevitable. I mean, I got one just the end of last week. It was telling me that I don't know, like I didn't have MFA turned on or something. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Please enter your Microsoft credentials to turn it on. I'm like, it had the logos. It was, you know what I mean? It didn't, it looks half decent, honestly. But you want to be aware of it and look for the things that are, kind of telltale signs of it. URLs, for example, kind of usually the dead giveaway. But there's trainings here that you can send to your employees if they do fail it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click on simulations up here at the top. And we're going to go ahead and click launch a simulation. So we're going to go ahead and create our own. So you have some options here as far as the technique that you're looking to implement. If it's a credential harvest, malware attachment, link to an attachment, things like that. What's a good one here? I always try to pick a different one. Let's do a link to an attachment. How about a link and attach? Or no, let's do a link to malware. It's a little bit easier to go ahead and work through. So we're going to go ahead and choose that. You can choose anyone you want, honestly. You can have some fun with this. Totally up to you. It's pretty easy to walk through these. It's like I said, it's like a wizard, like everything else we've been doing. So if you want to have some fun with it. So I'm going to choose link to malware. Mine not. And I'm going to go ahead and click next. So I'm going to have to give this simulation a name as far as, so this is going to be, I'll just use your name once again, because this has to be unique. So I'm going to go ahead and label this my simulation. I'm not going to worry about a description in this case. And go ahead and click next. So the payload and login page, essentially, this is what these are essentially templates that you're going to utilize here that you're going to be using in the phishing attack. So what it's going to look like to the user, or what's going to say. So let's say that we're going to go ahead and let's do approval for a line of credit. That seems pretty, and you can see here there's compromise rates. Let's choose a high one. DocuSign review in French. No, I don't want to have to read French here. Also, make sure it is in English, unless you are multilingual. I'm not. Let's do a OneDrive document share. Why not? And you can get a preview of what it's going to look like. Yeah, let's do that. That'll be fun. So try to choose a new one all the time. See what, so there's so many. Aaron, no worries. No worries. Welcome back. Welcome back. Just getting into a little phishing attack here. All right. So you have the option to choose specific users or groups within your organization. I'm just going to go ahead and choose the bubble to apply it to everybody. So all of you are going to see this coming from me. You can do the same thing, and I will see all of it coming from you, as well as all of your phishing attacks. And go ahead and click next down at the bottom, or down at this bottom. Sorry. You could also exclude users if you want. Once you choose users, giving you the option, or certain groups. I'm not going to do that. I'm applying it to the whole tenant, but it does give me that option. I'll go ahead and click next. And then here, as far as if essentially they fail the, if they click on the link for this example, what do we want to go ahead and the training that we're going to go ahead and send them to? So you could have your own courses itself that you can model yourself. You could also assign the training here, the Microsoft training recommended. You could have your own, if you have within your organization a training that you utilize, you can put the URL in there and use that. But we'll just use the Microsoft training experience, and then a due date as far as when to complete the training. So I'll do it 7 days after the simulation ends. Make sure everyone's getting this done quickly. Go ahead and click next. These are just some page templates that you could go ahead and choose for when they get phished. I always just grab the first one. I'm going to go ahead and click next. Sorry about that. All right. And then the notification itself that's delivered. So you can use the Microsoft default notification. You can also customize one for the end user itself. Like, if you passed, or like, hey, you could be encouraging and things like that. Say it happens to all of us. The Microsoft default ones itself, it's a positive reinforcement, a training reminder, and then you have to choose here, deliver after the simulation. And you can remind them if they get training, if they, remind them how long, hey, you got to finish the training, sort of thing. It'll automatically send out emails to them. And I'll go ahead and click next one more time. And we're just going to go ahead and launch the simulation as soon as I'm done. Don't worry about the number of days after. I delete these demo tenants afterwards. So just go ahead and click next. And we'll just go ahead and submit it and take a look. It does take a minute for everything to get sent out. I'm trying to get through that quick enough. I want to be able to turn things over to Ben here before we finish up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, Ben, actually, we'll give this we'll give this just another minute here. I'm gonna actually, you know what? Let's turn things over to you right now while this is running, because it'll actually give some time for those emails to send out, and we'll kind of come
Okay.
back to this. If they're getting, yeah, that's actually a better way of going about this here. So awesome.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead and turn things over here to Ben, because Divergent actually has a great tool to kind of help you as far as understand your current security posture. And yeah, Ben, I'll just turn it over to you. I don't want to give too much away, so go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So as I said at the beginning, we're an MSP that works on supporting IT departments. So we look good if you look good. So we want to make sure that we can provide value to, help you get better eyes on your environment and see where you could potentially, to the higher up, show where there's some savings, some, restructuring or improvements that can be made. So one of the tools that we offer is we could do it as a free assessment for you. Normally our assessments are paid, but for everybody on this call, we could do a free one. And what this does is take a look at your environment from the user side and from the licensing side, just as an overview to kind of see where you're at. So there may be breaches that you may not know about, that certain passwords would need to be changed depending on what those breaches are. Sometimes they're not critical, but sometimes they are. So it's good to know, if any of your work accounts are breached. One of the big value propositions in accounts that are active or inactive is that, sometimes HR will offboard someone, but not actually contact IT to have them, remove the license. So if those accounts are still active, if you don't have someone there to see, oh yeah, I've got some weird Outlook stuff going on, or I see some suspicious activity, if no one's there to monitor it, that is definitely an entry point. As was mentioned, everybody's their own little wormhole into the environment. So closing off those wormholes where nobody is watching it, that's a really great security suggestion. MFA, we always recommended by policy across the organization, but of course there are certain things like service accounts that, you may not be able to put MFA on them, but no one's logging in anyway. There's, certain exceptions, but especially if there are any administrators that don't have MFA, that's like leaving the front door open. So you want to make sure to catch those before any issues happen. In this free assessment, we'll also take a look at potential savings. Like I had mentioned before, offboarding some people that may have licenses just sitting there. So there are potential savings that we would look at to say, hey, we noticed that you have a whole bunch of E5 licenses that are not being used. That's about $1,000 a month that could be saved. Or we're not using E3 licenses anymore. We've upgraded everybody to E5. Why do we still have these E3s or business premium, business standard, that kind of stuff? So being able to take a really quick snapshot without doing any labor on your side, just to have this assessment, give you a little bit more visibility on your environment. Like I said, we're offering it for free. So feel free in the chat if you just ping and just to say, I'm interested, and we can reach out to you and get this set up. It's just for permissions that are required are reader permissions. So I can provide what those are. There's no edit permissions because we also don't want to have any possibility of changing anything in your environment. So it's just reading, making sure to pull the groups and stuff from your 365 environment on the read side. But it's absolutely painless, absolutely free, and you got nothing to lose. It might help, guide what's coming up on the horizon for you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, and the whole, like, we don't even get into like really licensing here, but I could go on and on about that. For those who are possibly in charge of purchasing licensing, it's it's kind of like a game you have to play, to where you have to figure out what exactly gets what and what's included with what and what's maybe you're double paying for and things like that. So a tool like this is really awesome for that, because there's certain things as far as security features that you might be paying for, and if you have like certain, enterprise like E5 licensing, for example, like it's already included.
Mhm. Right.
Especially as organizations like growing and like you're adding and you're like, oh, we want to use these services now. Well, are you getting rid of the old licenses? How are you converting your new ones? Especially if how you're purchasing your licensing is a big thing. Like if you're going through like a CSP, for example, like, Divergent, they're going to go ahead and help you cater that, kind of review everything on a yearly basis and talk about, maybe we don't want to commit to certain licenses for a whole year. We might do some pay as you go, that sort of thing, just to give that flexibility within your tenant. That's a big thing. that I see, especially seasonal workers. It's how you purchase your licensing. There's strategy to that as well.
Right.
On top of, and then it's like, okay, so once you assign these licenses, who's in your tenant? What do they have access to? Like, do you have these correct policies set? Like, do you have conditional access set? What kind of authentication are you utilizing? So, an assessment like that gives you a huge insight into into your organization, kind of that, like, 6,000-foot view of it. Because it's hard to see it. It's hard to see the forest when you're through the trees. Is that the saying?
That's
So,
it.
yep. It was somewhere. But yeah, no. So it's a great thing here for everyone to, if you're not, interested right now, let us know. If you are interested, just, please, we appreciate the feedback, and that's really it. And we're, here to help, you right size with whatever you're looking to do within your organization, because everyone's organization is different. So every solution needs to be different. So working with someone who can cater solutions, that's why we're here.
Way to do it. Yep. All right. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, Ben, let me go ahead and throw my screen back up so we can go ahead and take a look and find our phishing attack. So you can see here my simulation has been scheduled to launch, which is launching right when I created it. So what I'm going to do is here, go to the simulation training overview, and that'll take you inside of your simulation essentially. I can see here my simulation, the recent ones that have been launched. You can go ahead and view them all. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and head to Outlook. So this should have been an email sent to all of my everyone within my organization. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Outlook app from my little app waffle. I like to call it here, little waffle icon. And we should see. Oh, it looks like I didn't realize I didn't choose English. That's pretty funny. That is this German? Does anybody know? My apologies for that. I totally misread that. Okay, let's say I speak fluent German, and I know I'm going to download from OneDrive. So here's that link there, and I mean, dead giveaway right here. What is officence.com? All right, but there's a link here. It's been sent. Hey, I need to go ahead and download this file. I click on that here, that link to malware, and it has essentially, brings up my document itself. So I could go ahead and if I save this is actually on my local machine itself. So I'll go ahead and save it. And I can see here it has been downloaded, and that document itself, let me pull it up. Taking a minute to load on my local machine. And here is that document. Uh-oh, I've been phished. So that's the document. I downloaded it for that, and you're going to hear all those pings or just Outlook reminders coming in, and possible your other phishing attacks here. And what we'll see is that I also got that reminder saying, hey, I've been assigned to a training, so I messed up. So I could go to that training because and it shows you the email itself, the training name, how long it took. Let me know that I fell for the spam. It's got to be German, but that's okay. I won't dwell too much on that. So here in my attract simulation training, I have here, I can open up my simulation that I violated myself. I don't know how crazy. And I can get a report on who has clicked on it. It'll show me it also who has received it and who has opened and read it. It'll show you who's read it and then didn't click on the link, sort of thing. So showing here, but you're getting the feedback here from the simulation, letting you know, and you can view your compromised users. I didn't mean to say, and there I am. clicked on link, read message, the whole nine right there. So, and we, it's kind of fun. We're not trying to like, it's the punk our, our people in our organization. What we're trying to do is let them know that this happens and this is going to happen. And it's going to continue to happen. And we need to make sure that we are ready for it. So you train them in the idea of what to look for inside of these, fishy emails for these phishing attempts. So that is what this is for. And it's a I think this is a great tool because how often you may think I would never click on that link. Well, you'd be surprised how many people do. So it's one of those things that I always like to highlight here because it's a great thing to set up. It's a great thing to go ahead and empower and train your team to go ahead and make sure that malware is not happening, credentials aren't being stolen within your organization. So it's really, really awesome for that. All right, so we just have a few minutes left. So what I wanted to do is go ahead here, and thanks everybody for filling out that last poll. I sent that out. Really, really appreciate that. But I wanted to do, I'll come back off camera here so I'm not distracting, but wanted to go ahead and open up with these last few minutes. If there's any question for myself, for Ben, if anything on top of mind that as far as what we talked about today, or maybe outside of that as well, that could lead maybe to a further discussion later on. I just wanted to go ahead and open up here these last few minutes for that. So you can come off mic if you like. You can throw it in the chat, whichever you'd like to do with this little bit of time we have remaining. And if you don't have any questions, you are more than welcome to have a minute or two of your day back. No questions, Aaron? Oh, you are welcome. Appreciate that. And thanks for coming, everybody. Angeline, you are welcome as well. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate that. Ben, thanks so much for being here as well and putting on today's event. Really appreciate it here. Junaid, thanks so much. Appreciate that. All of you were great. Really appreciated the feedback here today. Rishi, you are welcome as well. Like I said, if you're interested in learning more about that RAD assessment, there and do you need for the recording itself, just go ahead and we'll Ben, we can get you in touch with that and we can reach out to you as well. So go ahead and you can leave your actually responding to the last poll would be the best. Just having that in there, that's the best way to go about it here because that's the best way. Brian, you're welcome and thanks. All good. Appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, security, Nairi is, thank you as well. Yeah, security is, we cover a few things in the time we have, giving you the chance to kind of get your hands dirty a little bit, but can't stress how much more there is to it. So, tip of the iceberg here, but really want you to, the real reason we do these is to go ahead and just get you thinking about it in a way that maybe you haven't thought about it before. And really taking the security posture of your organization very seriously because it is super, super important, for everybody here and, for your organization, for the customers you work with, really, really super important here to go ahead and be aware and manage and be respectful of everyone's, information that you are possibly handling. So that's really awesome. So I really appreciate everybody hanging out. It is, we did come to the end of our session here. So if there are no further questions, we're going to go ahead and give you the rest of your day back and we're going to go enjoy ours. And really appreciate everybody hanging out with us today. It was a lot of fun. Great session, everybody. And like I said, any questions here, we'll be reaching out. But if you have any, reach out here to Ben, myself. Totally fine. Would love to hear from you. But thanks, everybody. Appreciate it and enjoy the rest of your day.